identify is interfaith dialogue. Now you may feel that interfaith dialogue means nothing, it leads to nothing, but my experience has been that it does make a big impact. My daughter, who I mentioned, Dr. Amane, is head of the first ever Jewish Muslim Center at Cambridge University, alongside the Jewish Christian Center. So at Cambridge University, you have a whole host of major figures like Prince Hassan from Jordan, he's a patron of the center, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom involved with promoting interfaith dialogue. In America, interfaith dialogue has picked up and people are involved, as we find as we travel. The Gulen Institute itself, you people are a living example of interfaith, because as I understand it, Gulen's message is interfaith dialogue, interfaith understanding, interfaith love. With that, I would like to conclude my talk and open the floor to questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as long as you continue filling in the questionnaires. Please don't be diverted. Amjad, have you got a questionnaire? Have you got one of these questions, please? And role model, remember His Majesty King Abdullah. We'll be noting that. We don't want him to get in trouble when he goes home.
Funding this study?
Not me, it's funding him. And where are you from?
I would just prefer to say the world, right? Or
mashallah.
Yeah.
I understand. Don't worry, brother. We will not give anything away. Yes.
Thank you very much for this lovely speech. I have a question. I work in a research institution at Bristol, Texas for a university. And,
Which university is this?
Sam Houston State University. They have a research institution which was funded by the Department of Defense. We do research on extremism and terrorism, and as a Muslim scholar, I try to convince people some of the these questions. And one of the big questions they always ask me that there is a culture of martyrdom in the Islam after the 9/11 and everything. That's a depiction they say in the Western media. And how do we basically respond to that question? Culture of martyrdom, because we hear this suicide attacks in the Iraq every day, and basically people who claim to be Muslim killing either the Sunnis or Shiites, or in Afghanistan and everywhere. So the depiction in the Muslim media is there is a culture of martyrdom. That's why they are doing it. And what would be the best way to respond?
This is a very good question, and I hope the non-Muslims picked it up. The question he's asking is an extremely important one. In the media, Islam is often depicted as a religion which is negative in its impact. Islam is depicted as a religion which promotes suicide, promotes violence, what he refers to as cultural martyrdom. And martyrdom is somehow every Muslim is programmed to blow himself or herself up. Now the Muslims here will recognize that this is far removed from reality. Let's look at the figures and facts. Suicide bombing, terrorism. You've heard of the Tamil Tigers. Who has heard of the Tamil Tigers? Who are the Tamil Tigers? Are they Muslim?
No.
What are they? You don't remember. What are they?
They're British financed group to disrupt.
Where are they from? What religion?
Religion, I think they're Hindus or Christians.
Sri Lanka.
They do not have an actual religion. They're Marxist-oriented group. Well, they're Tamil Hindus.
He is right at the back. So even with Tamil Tigers, I am shocked to hear it's such a great center that people don't even know who the Tamil Tigers are. They're very much of the Hindu religion. Their whole movement is to have their own state in a certain part of Sri Lanka. Let us not be confused about it. Hinduism is a great religion. Hinduism advocates peace because there are very many movements within Hinduism which come out from Hinduism which advocate non-violence. Jainism comes out of Hinduism, which is a completely non-violent movement. Having said that, the point I'm making here is this, that even Hinduism, even Buddhism, which believes in non-violence, and we've had the Buddhist monks being involved in suicide and killing themselves and all kinds of violent acts, even Buddhism and Hinduism, which are pacific religions, that is, passive religions in terms of violence, are provoked into suicide acts when they are acts of political desperation. These are not religious acts, but these are acts of violence. The Tamil Tigers have killed thousands of people. They've killed presidents and prime ministers, and they've killed them long before Muslims started suicide attacks. That's number one. You've heard of the kamikazes, the pilots, the Japanese pilots in the Second World War. These were suicide missions. They were called suicide missions. I can go on and on in other cultures. But the Muslim world first had its suicide bomber, as I understand it, and there's some great scholars present here, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but around the 1980s, starting with Lebanon. One or two. By the 1990s, it started picking up. And as the situation became more desperate in the Muslim world, you had a situation in the Middle East, in Palestine, you had in South Asia, you had the situation in Kashmir, you had Chechnya, you had off and on in Bosnia. And these problems of these people have not been solved for over half a century. There are generations living in refugee camps. It isn't one generation, it isn't two, there are 3 generations now living. And people are just desperate now. There is no future. They don't have access to water, they don't have access to education, they don't have access to anything. It's a miracle how these people continue to produce. The Palestinians to produce some of the finest academics and intellects coming out with the extreme pressures on them. Now, one strain and one reaction to that in these societies has been as an act of desperation, and I don't condone it, I don't justify it, I don't support it, but the reaction sociologically is to be explained as a political response to what they see as a hopeless situation. It's an expression of extreme despair. Because by definition, a Muslim is an activist, as I said earlier. But he's not an individual who will negate life. That a Muslim doesn't do. You're a Muslim, you know the rules of war set by Hazrat Abu Bakr, the first Caliph of Islam. Did you read the rules of war? The rules of war by Abu Bakr.
I haven't read that book, but
No, it's not a book. These are rules. They're just 8 rules. When you talk to your colleagues, mention this. Tell them that the first Caliph of Islam, now listen very carefully. I'm talking of the 7th century. The 7th century, the first Caliph of Islam laid down rules that even during war, at the height of war, a Muslim could not kill a priest or a rabbi, any religious figure of the other religion. He could not kill women or children. He could not damage trees and vegetation. Now, where does suicide come into all this? It is the most civilized way of conducting war. It does not talk of these terrible napalms and phosphorus and all these terrible developments that take place where civilian populations are disfigured and killed and murdered on such a huge scale. Islam retains a very high moral attitude to war itself. So when someone tells you cultural martyrdom, they really need to be, you need to really explain your own history to them better. Because by definition, a Muslim cannot commit suicide. By definition, because we believe God gives you life and God will take life. You can't decide that I'm going to kill myself. However desperate you are, you must face life. And remember, the greatest example for Muslims is the Prophet of Islam, and he faced very desperate situations. People attacked him, people insulted him, people humiliated him, but he stood his ground. And you remember that story when they offered him everything under the earth. He said that even if you put the sun in one hand and the moon in the other hand, I will not give up my faith.